Hello there. Welcome to Positive Changes, a self-kick podcast. I'm your host, Shelley F. Knight. I'm a former nurse and clinical hypnotherapist, turned podcaster and author of Positive Changes, a self-kick book, and Good Grief, the A to Z approach of modern day grief healing. In each episode, I aim to share my clinical, spiritual, and personal experience to help you feel inspired to create your own positive changes in life. Fear not, it's not just me. Each week, I will bring on a new guest and they will share their authentic story of positive change and the tools that they used on their journey. So, if you're ready to be inspired, let's go. In this second episode, we are joined by the wonderful and truly inspiring author and medium, Carole J. Obley. I absolutely loved our conversation and asked so many questions, especially about what our loved ones in spirit can tell us about love, life, and our grief journey.
There is an afterlife. Now, that sounds really kind of funny or silly, but there are people that I've encountered that go, well, I don't know if there's an afterlife. So that is probably the number one lesson that those in spirit want grieving loved ones to know. I'm here, I'm in a different level of consciousness, but I'm absolutely fine, and I'm still right there with you.
Wishing you a gentle, comforting, and insightful listen. Please join us now as Carole and I talk about all things spiritual. So today on the show, we're joined by Carole Obley, and she's a workshop leader, a medium, and author of Wisdom from the Spirit World. So hello there, Carole.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
Bless you. I am so looking forward to sharing your messages. Today, I think we're going to talk about positive changes and the choices we have around that. So please do share your story.
Well, I've been a medium for about 25 years, and I have gone through numerous changes as a result of doing this work. And from early days in my 20s, when I got into a bunch of trouble with drinking and drugs, actually, to my awakening at that point to spirituality. And I have always felt intuitively that that awakening is what set me squarely on the pathway that I'm on. I don't think I would be here without that. So it's interesting that there are so many people in our backgrounds that have things that we're not exceptionally proud of, or that were very challenging or painful, but yet those functioned, if we allow them to, as sort of wake-up calls. In my books, I've written about wake-up calls and things that are generally very painful for us, but they put us on a different pathway. And the pathway of transformation. So that's what's happened with me. I'm a vastly different person than I was when I initially stopped drinking way back in my 20s, and subsequently have really been on this totally different pathway. I don't even look at the old days as being the same person. I really see that as a different personality, a different energy. And that's how radical I see that change as, from who I was to who I am currently.
I love that. And I think it's really powerful what you're saying, because we can look back a year or 20 years and we don't always recognize ourselves. We keep making these changes and we wake up and we're like, I'm not that person I was. And I think sometimes when we're trying to create positive changes, half the battle is actually that other people still see us as we were, not as we are.
Sometimes, Sometimes, yeah. But, I've had so many people, including my family, because my family was with me. My mom and dad, my mom has since crossed over, but I was horrible during those days. And I was extremely rebellious and very disagreeable. And I hurt people. And, my family since then, and before my mother passed, told me how much I've changed. And, receiving that kind of validation is to me priceless. And it really brought tears to my eyes when my mom said that to me. And my father too, who's still with us, he's 91. Um, but yeah, so I think when other people reflect to us and say, boy, you've really changed, you've really made a big difference in your life, that's our validation. And that's our sense of knowing that we're on the right pathway.
Yeah. I think it's brilliant that you can look back and, as you say, you're not proud of it, but I think we have to accept that everything we've gone before us creates who we are today. And, I think I drank loads in my 20s. I'm teetotaler now in my 40s, but in my 20s, I certainly drank. So what was it when you was drinking? What made you know or want to create the positive change and drink less?
I was dying. I was dying at the age of 25. Um, when I drank, I I completely bypassed social drinking. Today, even today, many years later, because I have not drank alcohol in, oh, it's about 37 years. I haven't drank alcohol, and I really, I don't miss it at this point. Um, but I was drinking every other day. The next day I was so ill, I couldn't drink. But when I went to it, I'm talking, 12 hours of drinking and, taking this or that along with it. And so I was dying. And in order to save my life, I knew that I had to, get into 12-step recovery. And I also went to private counseling, and I went to group counseling, as well as doing work on my own, introspective work. So, dying and suffering are very compelling. They're
Yeah.
very compelling for change. They're very compelling motivators, for us to change. Unfortunately, I've done readings, mediumistic readings for many people um, who experience the opposite. They've lost loved ones to drug addictions, opioids and so forth. So they didn't have that transformation. I consider what happened to me way back when, and actually it was 1983 that I became sober. Um, I consider it a great blessing because, as you stated, it jump started, if you will, put me on the pathway I'm on. It took a while. It took about 12 or 13 years for me to find this pathway, but I would have never found it if I was still, I don't think I would be here physically if I was still drinking the way that I was.
Yeah, and that's really powerful. I think it's one thing to like have a glass of wine with dinner or celebrating your birthday, but obviously yours was a lot heavier than me. You said 12 hours. I was like, I don't think I could do anything for 12 hours. I couldn't even sleep for 12 hours. So that's, consumed many, I don't know, days, months of your
Well,
life from drinking.
I was addicted to the bar atmosphere as well. I loved the excitement of walking in and not knowing who's going to be there and striking up conversations with different people, playing the jukebox, acting crazy. I was addicted to all of that too. And I believe I actually there is no alcoholism in my immediate family, but I discovered many years later, Shelley, that both great grandfathers were severe alcoholics. And so it skipped a couple of generations. And in my new book, Wisdom from the Spirit World, I talk about patterns, family patterns that can come down. And, until those are healed and balanced, we repeat those. So, that's something that I do in my work as a medium. Sometimes the spirit world will come in and say, this needs to be addressed. There's people in our family that are still carrying this toxic pattern. So, until we really awaken to what's going on, we're going to keep repeating that merry-go-round.
I find that fascinating, and I'm a true believer of like the afterlife and the spirit world. So could I ask, like, when we're down here, we're making these choices in life, whether it's to drink or give up drink, when we're making these life choices, what does spirit say about that? How is that shaping our lives?
Well, interestingly, thank you so much for asking that, because one of the chapters in Wisdom from the Spirit World is our power of choice determines the quality of our lives. And so every human being has the gift of free will. And it is our, God-given, spirit-given um, right to make decisions and choices. Those choices that we make will determine what we experience in life. So, I always say, if I'm a person that for a lot of years I went to, I would get chiropractic adjustments, on my spine and on my neck. And once you get an alignment like that and you feel, oh, okay, I feel really good, and, that I'm healthy. If you come out of that, if your spine, if you tweak your neck or you fall or have an injury and you come out of that alignment, you really, really feel that. And you go, oh, wow, that hurts. And so you experience pain. It's much like that with our spirituality and our alignment with source, or what most people call God. If we are not aligned in proper alignment, we're going to suffer. And so, and that doesn't mean that we are, goody two shoes or we're perfect or any of that. What it means is that we make choice based on natural laws, which are eternal principles that are immutable, and also how we would like to be treated. We've all heard of the golden rule, treat others as you would like to be treated. And that really, you can sum it up. It's very simple. But if we make choices like that, then we're going to remain in alignment. So choice is everything, and so is intent. The intent behind the choice, the intent behind an action or a behavior. It really fuels our lives and, what we're going to do. And also, um, what our life is going to look like, what's going to come to us as a result of those choices.
So free will is like our ability to make our own choices.
Yes.
Just okay. So if we're, because I sort of did past life regression, I did nursing, but then I did like past life regression, not the obvious career transition, Carole, if I'm honest, but that's what I did. And in that, it's very much in past life regression, you're coming back due to karmic debt, and you're coming back to learn lessons for your highest good, for the source's higher good, and things like that. So you've got free will, but are there certain choices we should be making while we're down here? Like maybe we're meant to learn, maybe in the past we've been victim and now we're going to be perpetrator. So do we have to make bad choices, or what does spirit tell us? There are no bad choices, it's all just experience.
Well, it's sort of like if you and I go on a road trip and we have the same destination, we have plans to go to the same city and we're going to meet there. You might take a very convoluted pathway to get there. You might take a bunch of shortcuts. I might take the long way around because, I want to see the countryside, or I want to do this or that. We're going to end up in the same place. We can make We make the choice of how quickly that's going to happen, or are we going to keep going back over things? And you're absolutely correct when you say that we come into this 3D reality, the physical plane, in order to evolve. That is the only reason that we are here. We are not here to experience money. We are not here to experience physicality per se. But however, through those things and through relationships and, career and all of that, we really discover who we are and paradoxically who we are not. Because again, if you come out of alignment and say that you become very centered on, well, life is about things, life is about earning money, you're going to feel very empty inside, and that creates suffering. Suffering is a wonderful way to awaken. And I know that none of us want it, none of us like it, but yet it's the door that, with that golden key, that opens up the opportunity to grow and evolve.
And what kind of things may we recognize in ourselves or maybe in someone else when they're having a spiritual awakening? What are the signs and symptoms we might present?
There are a number of them. I would say you feel a, a range of emotions. You feel anything from sadness to joy to maybe resentment. Um, I often say the spiritual pathway is not a bed of roses. It isn't. There's many dark nights, many, many dark nights. And in no way am I saying that I'm some kind of a martyr and I've gone through all of that. But I have had my share of dark nights, and with drinking, um, with anxiety, with fear, and these are common human um, experiences that we all have. If we can look at them as the opportunity that they bring, that's kind of the pearl that's in the middle of all that darkness, in that suffering. Then we can use it to move ahead. So sometimes what our greatest liabilities have been they transform into our greatest assets.
I like that. It's kind of like every day, though. Just say like some days we could be sad, sometimes we could be joyous. So it's hard to know if it's an awakening, but maybe if you apply it to what's going on in your life, like loss of a loved one or loss of finances or health, and then you get them and they don't feel quite so normal or predictable, then maybe that's your awakening.
Well, you mentioned the loss of a loved one. That is a truly transformative event for most people. And I, as a medium, I have done many, many, many thousands of readings for people in grief. And all of them are changed by, when somebody in our family, or even a friendship too, the dynamics, the energy in the family changes as a result of that person no longer being there physically. Now, the same with a friendship. So even death of course, it's transformation for the soul, but it's also transformation for those left behind.
Yeah, but we don't see it as a positive, do we? We like, back to my nursing days, like when patients died, the family that were left behind, like their way of life died. And they said, oh, it's never going to be the same again. It won't, because there is someone missing. But as you say, you can transform it into a new way forward, which sounds very simple, I know. But it does transform you because you can never be the same person again. But that's not always a bad thing. As we were saying earlier, we change
No,
all the
it's not.
time.
And, part of mediumship is that it's twofold. It's to alleviate suffering in people by proving the continuity of the soul. That's number one. And the second thing is, good mediumship should speak to the innate reality of each human being, which is the soul. and it should address the spirituality of the receiver of that mediumship. So I know that some people think that perhaps, there's an entertainment value to mediumship, and there is. I mean, it can be fun, and I've never laughed so much over the years doing readings too, because the spirit people do have a sense of humor. Um, but at its core, it's about the majesty and the eternity of the soul. And I think sometimes as souls in this physical realm, in this physical vehicle, we forget who we truly are. And I don't want to use the cliches, you've heard them about we're a spiritual being having a physical experience and all of that. But I really think I know I have forgotten my true essence of who I am. And certainly way back when I was doing the drinking and I was sleeping essentially, I had no clue who I was. And so that's why I look at what happened to me, and I went through all of that suffering. I can look back now and say that was really a blessing for me. At the time, no, no, because when we're in the midst of pain, we can't see that ray of light that's at the end of the tunnel, so to speak.
Yeah, and I should imagine that most people go to a medium when they can't find the answers themselves. Do you know what I mean? It's like when you've got that relationship breakdown, or you're like me, ongoing health issues, or the death of a loved one. So I know in your book you say that love is indestructible by death. So do you get loads of people coming to you to try and get that communication with those that have passed?
Yes, that's the bulk of what I do. I've been heavily trained in evidential mediumship, meaning the spirit communicator presents facts of their identity, memories, things that I absolutely would not know that are not general in nature. So I've been trained heavily with that. And that matters not for the sake of the medium to say how great they are, but to deepen the heart bond between that soul in the spirit world and the receiver that loves them. And that bond of love being indestructible is something I've seen time and time and time again. I always tell people I don't believe in life after death. I know it. I know it. A belief to me implies, well, I think that might be true, but I'm not really sure. I know that we go on because I've seen it firsthand.
So you communicate between like this realm and the next realm, and you say predominantly to do with people that have had loved ones die. So for those that are left behind, as I said, from my nursing days, I saw people crippled with grief. What can the people from, well, the loved ones in spirit tell us? What message could they pass on to those that we've got listening today, that are grieving their loved ones? What could spirit tell us to reassure us?
Well, the first lesson, this book, Wisdom from the Spirit World, is about what I learned from being a conduit. The teachings that the spirit people, those in spirit, want to have passed on through thousands of sessions. Um, so the very first one is very simplistic, and it is there is an afterlife. Now, that sounds really kind of funny or silly, but there are people who that I've encountered that go, well, I don't know if there's an afterlife. So that is probably the number one lesson that those in spirit want grieving loved ones to know. I'm here. I'm in a different level of consciousness, but I'm absolutely fine, and I'm still right there with you. My second book, called I'm Still With You, I named it that because in session after session, I heard myself saying, he's still with you, she's still with you. And so I thought, when it came to give the book a title, which to me is the hardest part of writing a book, is to get a title. I thought, okay, what? And then all of a sudden I heard, you always say this in sessions, I'm still with you. Name it that. So that's what I did. And those in spirit, they don't want us to stop living. They don't want us to be sad. They want us to know there's no reason to be sad because I can actually be closer to you now because there's not even a separation in the physical world anymore. And I can come to you through your thoughts and feelings. And that's called intuition.
So when you're speaking to the loved ones in spirit, does it matter if they didn't believe in the afterlife when they was down here on earth?
I'm sorry. Does it mean that they have to believe in this or that they didn't believe in it?
I'm just thinking, like, some religions don't believe in an afterlife, but you're saying that when you're in spirit, people want
Yes.
the loved ones down here on earth to know that, there is an afterlife. And does that apply at all? Because some people say in their earthly incarnation didn't believe in an afterlife. Now you're trying to pass on the messages going, there is an afterlife. Does that happen?
Yeah, actually, there's an example in Wisdom from the Spirit World. There was a lady that I have read for her numerous times when she first came to me, and I don't ask any questions of people before I read for them. I don't want to know who they want to connect with. I simply, anyone who's legitimate and genuine will not ask questions before reading, or actually even, just for verification through the reading or for validation. But her partner, who became her new husband, and they had known each other for a long time. He had been sort of an agnostic or an atheist, and they often had discussions about it. And she was really on the fence. She didn't know what she actually believed either. So when he crossed over and he came through in a reading that I did for her, and of course, my not knowing anything, I saw a big stack of books. And I said, this man was more rationally oriented. He showed me a big stack of books. He did a lot of reading. Yes, yes, he absolutely did. And yeah, he did not talk about, dying or the afterlife at all. When he came through in the reading, he said, you know what? We do have an afterlife. I found that out. And I just want you to know that all those discussions we had, I now know that I do go on. And it was interesting because this man was continuing on with his studies in the spirit world. And I tell people this quite frequently that what we do here, we can continue over there. And, if we're a teacher, for example, we could continue on with engaging in teaching there. If we did service work, if we did healing for people, if we were in medical, you can work with healing on the other side. These are things that I've personally seen. And without knowing what that person did in their earthly life, and I'll say, I see your son, he's working with young people. And that was another reading. And the woman said, yeah, he loved kids. He did coaching when he was here. He was a teacher. So these are things that I've personally seen and have been validated. So yes, there are people who they have an awakening when they pass, when they die physically, and they go, oh, I'm still here. My consciousness did. I'm still conscious, but my body's down there. So, I've seen that a lot too, where the person will kind of go, why am I up here, but my body's down there? If they didn't have any spiritual beliefs, that can actually occur.
I find that fascinating. And what I think is really lovely is that we're all down here on earth learning lessons. And then at the end of our time on earth, we still continue to learn lessons. I just think it's all
Oh, there's never an
experience.
end. There's never an end. And, spiritual growth, the soul's growth is continuous. If you think of the flame, and you have the beautiful candle behind you there up on the shelf, that light never goes out. And I mean, that's the eternal flame of the soul. And so, this, you and I sitting here talking in a physical body is only one minute aspect of who we are, because who we are is much, much huger than the little mind. I call it the little me, the rational mind, the ego. The soul doesn't know anything about time or any of that. It only knows continuous expression.
I think that's brilliant. So when we're down here and we're saying that we're getting overwhelmed, and like yourself, you was like drinking too much and all the other experiences that led to you drinking too much, that's when we're here, we're just living in it, aren't we? And it's all overwhelming. From spirit world, what do they think life's about? What are we here to experience? What's the biggest lesson we come for?
Love and service. There's two: love and service. And really, they're one and the same. They're one and the same. So, and by the way, with service, I don't mean that you become a doormat and you do everything and just and run yourself, ragged. What I mean is looking at what is your unique contribution. Every person, every animal, I'll include animals. I'm passionate about animals as well. Every living being has purpose. Now, usually when people, I've had many readings, and that is the number one question, by the way, that people want to know. What is my purpose? So, that more so than any other question, I call it the $1 million question. And a lot of people mean, what am I supposed to be doing for a living? And purpose really doesn't mean that. That's a secondary purpose. The primary purpose is emanating spirit in all of um, its beauty. So that could mean, purpose might be, I'm a mother. I have a family. That might be that could be purpose, because you're doing what you need to be doing here. See, the soul plans this before coming here, in that tiny body of the infant. The soul actually creates these things called blueprints. I've written about these in my books. They are plans, so to speak, for the physical incarnation. So, um, what happens is the soul will meet with the perfect circumstances in order to, evolve. And so that might mean, being born into poverty, because if I overcome poverty, if I grow out of that, if I learn a lot of important soul lessons through that, I've met purpose here. It's not what we think of. We think of an individual, boy, aren't they successful? She's very successful. Or he's, he became very popular and he's, a big success. That is not really the meaning of success when you go to the spirit world. And I can tell you too that if you were famous here or you had a lot of money here, that doesn't mean anything when you go to spirit. It's the quality of your light, the quality of the light, the intensity of your light. So, and when you're in spirit, you can actually see that, and you can't hide that. So, somebody who is in the relatively darker realms, because there are levels of consciousness, in the spirit world, someone who is in the relatively lower realms, um, has to really demonstrate they have to say, I want to go higher. They may have been a greedy person. They may have been a person who harmed others. Most people, the average person, goes to the mid planes of the spirit world, and it's very beautiful there. And so, we earn that place based on the consciousness that we left here with. So, what really matters? Those two things: love and service. You won't take anything else with you.
So it doesn't matter if you're a millionaire or a stay-at-home mum, that might be your purpose. And when we get to the other side, it's just about the journey.
Exactly. Exactly. Someone who is, let's say, a millionaire, they might have had certain lessons to learn through having a lot of money like that, because we all know that, having that kind of money, you live a vastly different life. Well, most people do, not everybody, but most people live a very different life than somebody who, is earning minimum wage or whatever. So there could be certain experiences that the soul needed to have through having a lot of money like that, or fame. On the contrast, someone who was born into poverty, someone that suffered abuse as a child. Every soul, there's this sounds very I don't know, I suppose difficult to understand sometimes. Why would somebody choose to be born into poverty? Why would somebody choose to experience abuse? Um, and on a personality level, you don't. But on a soul level, the soul in its infinite wisdom knows what it needs in order to advance. So, out of something very painful, as we were talking about, transformation and change, there are many people that I've seen that have overcome very, very horrendous early beginnings in life. And they've completely transformed themselves. And sometimes, you know, because of that, and they've developed empathy, they've developed compassion. These are high spiritual qualities. So that maybe couldn't be learned in any other way, but walking through those circumstances.
So it's just going to go back to like that was the millionaire thing, but going back to like, when we spoke about service, you said it's not about being a doormat or burning out or people pleasing, it's your unique purpose as such. So if someone's sitting there today, like, 35-year-old mum of two, and she's thinking there must be more to life, how would she discover if there's more to life than being a stay-at-home mum, or what her purpose is? How would she know? Maybe that is her purpose, but how would she know?
Well, I think that, emotions serve a purpose. Too many people in the so-called new age, I don't even like to use that word, but the metaphysical or new age community, they demonize emotions. Emotions are not bad. There's righteous anger. Anger motivates what? It can motivate change. Dissatisfaction, boredom, those can be used as springboards. We wouldn't be here without emotions. I never ever tell people, oh, you shouldn't feel sad. Your loved one's been gone 5 years. You shouldn't feel sad. No, you allow sadness to come up. The point is to not get stuck in it. So you don't want to stuff anything down. So I would say somebody that feels the need that, okay, maybe that karma is complete now. Those lessons of being the mom are complete. I need to nourish something within myself. I'm not saying to neglect duties if you're responsible for minor children. But certainly there's a lot of women in particularly that kind of reinvent themselves, and talents that they had, they put on the back burner when they had kids, and then they go back to them. So I feel like we know that intuitively. We might feel boredom, we might feel empty, and that's kind of what we were talking about with the dark night of the soul. And there's a lot of things. If you don't allow emotions to come up and speak to you and say, "Hey, you're out of alignment here," then you're going to stay stuck. So absolutely, all emotions are valid. They need to be expressed. They need to be recognized, and they can be used for to motivate change.
I love that explanation. There's a book that I absolutely love. It's called The Five Stages of the Soul. And it goes through five stages, as your title suggests. And one of them is the search. And it's proffered that we all experience the search that we can go home, every night, absolutely love our, married life, single life, whatever it is. But in all of our lives, we'll get to a stage where we think the niggles come in. There's more. What am I here for? It comes for everyone. So I love your explanation, because even if you love being a mum, and as you say, you put all those skills on the back burner, when you get that niggle, allow the emotions to come up, because it's probably that intuitive or the soul trying to speak to say, you are a mum, but what else is there for you?
Yes. And it's so important for people to listen to the soul. The soul is not like the rational mind. It doesn't scream and whine and cry. It's that subtle, we've all heard this, the still small voice through intuition. Now, sometimes the mind will take that and run away with it, but the soul, I look at soul as prompting. Soul prompts. It doesn't hit us over the head. It prompts us to say, explore that direction, explore this. Sometimes there are people that come onto our pathway, and that's the soul, the magnetic attraction, showing us a different way. We know about I mentioned natural laws. One of the natural laws is the law of attraction. So like energy attracts like energy. Unfortunately, that natural law became kind of misunderstood when, with it was a number of years ago, that the book and the movie The Secret, and people kind of interpreted it as just being, well, I go and I see a diamond ring in the window, and if I think about it enough, I'm going to get the diamond ring. So the real law of attraction is you will attract similar vibrations to you, whether that's people or places or things, experiences, could be any of that and all of it. But the soul is always in charge, and it can use the personality, which we all have. It can use the personality as sort of its servant, or its vehicle for expression.
So I love that, soul prompts. I've never heard it. Is that like the same as synchronicities? When you can't explain it, things just kind of fall into place with that alignment.
Yeah, synchronicity means meaningful coincidence. So two seemingly unrelated events that coincide, and they create meaning. I'm speaking now from a spiritual perspective of what synchronicity is. The famous Swiss psychoanalyst Carl Jung talked an awful lot about synchronicity, and he actually even had, in his practice when he was counseling patients, he had synchronicity occur when he would be talking about things. So synchronicity is because of the underlying unity of the entire universe. We see duality here because we're in a plane of duality. That's what we're seeing right now, by the way, and what's going on with the current consciousness is division and duality. The truth is that there is really unity. And so that's my theory of how synchronicity operates, because the more that you're open to, and you remove um, judgment from your mind and division and so forth, the more that you'll experience synchronicity, because you're allowing that to flow through you, and it creates meaning. There's meaning in everything. But we have to be awake to see that and to notice it.
I've absolutely loved this. And I just want to conclude with asking you, like, so the people that are listening today, what's one thing they could do today to create a positive change towards spirituality? Where could they start?
Well, in the third section of Wisdom from the Spirit World, it's kind of the doing section of applying some of this. And I write a chapter on merging your unique personality, starting where you're at. You don't have to be someone else, or You be just who you are with all of your unique skills and qualities and creativity, and merging that with your soul awareness. And I give exercises in the book about how to do that. There's so many people, especially now, who are seeking or searching for, because there's been a lot of displacement. What's my next step? I'm not sure where to go. Over the past year, I've done many readings in which people are seeking more spiritual guidance, coming from a higher plane, and looking at, where do I go now? And they don't really know. So I thought it was very useful in the third section of wisdom to write about how can I find that out. And so you really do this sort of self assessment. It's nothing complex. This should not be complex. That's the rational mind. When you start pulling the mind in, it wants to complicate things. The soul is like a child or an animal, very simple and very pure. Very simple, very pure. That's why I tell people, children and pets and animals in general, any animal, that is the closest you're going to get to in a living being experiencing God, is by connecting with the animals and connecting with children, because they're very pure, and they're very open to this, to higher sense perception.
I think that's beautiful. I was smiling as you're saying it, because we've got 4 children and a dog, and they're all beautiful in their own way, but when they're together, like collectively, it's like an unspoken language. It's beautiful, like a telepathic dog. I truly believe it. I've
Yeah.
absolutely loved this. Thank you so much. I think you're going to help people, because you can communicate between the two worlds. So I've absolutely loved it. Thank you so much for joining us today, Carole.
Yes. Thanks so much for having me, Shelley.
If you enjoyed today's episode, please make sure you subscribe and leave a positive review. If you would like to create your own positive changes, you can buy Positive Changes, a self-kick book from all online book retailers or from shelleyfknight.com. If you need a dollop of positivity until the next episode, come like and follow us over on Facebook at Shelley F. Knight, Life Goes On. As always, I've been Shelley F. Knight, and you've been amazing.